Since the beginning of the Horn of Africa's human history, human migrations played an essential role in our diversity. Whether it's for discovery, conquering, or just on accident, ethnicities of all kinds left their imprint on the places we call home today. Yet, because of borders and assimilation, we are blind to the beauty that is right in front of us. Through this video series, we'll begin to lift that blind to see the beauty and diversity in the Horn of Africa with a focus on smaller nations that surround Oromia. Join me today as we go into the neighborhood. The Sidama, a Cushitic ethnic group and nationality that speaks Sidamu Afo and reside in Sidami Gopa, known by many as just Sidama, was just recently established as its own region in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, they're the fifth biggest ethnic group. That means in terms of population, they're bigger than 4 other regions and 2 chartered cities. This makes it even more surprising that it wasn't until recently that the Sidama were able to decide in a referendum if they want to have their own region. Some aspects of Sidama culture that make them very unique to some of their neighbors is that they have their own indigenous lunar calendar system based on Busa, which is 5 constellation of 7 stars and their proximity to the moon. You can see this symbol throughout Sidama culture. For example, the Sidama National Liberation Front, an organization that helped topple the Derg, uses 7 stars on its flag to symbolize the Busa, and in a much greater sense, the Sidama culture. The calendar system also has holidays attached with it, one of them being the Sidama New Year festival called Fiche, which is a registered intangible cultural heritage of humanity by the UN's Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. There is many more unique and interesting qualities among the Sidama that crosses into their history as well. To cover their history in an organized fashion, I'll be dividing the rest of this episode into 6 parts. Their origins, their time before and after conquest by Menelik, their time under occupation, and their incorporation to the SNMPR, and in this case, their own region. The Sidama believed that along with some other Cushitic people, they were the ancient inhabitants of northern Ethiopia. In the case of the Sidama, some scholars trace the origins to an area surrounding Lake Haik in modern-day Wello before the 7th century AD, while others, including the famed Sidama historian Wenna Hankarso, believe that the ancient Sidama actually originated in Ankober Showa. Whatever the case may be, due to either the fact that the Exkamite Empire kept expanding into their ancestral land or to the land's dwindling soil fertility, in around the 8th or 9th century, the ancient Sidama migrated to a large chunk of territory south of the Blue Nile to Lake Hawassa and Lake Abaya and stretched into areas adjacent to modern-day Bale Oromia. And obviously, due to continued fighting, migrations, and the ancient Sidamas branching off into other groups, the remaining Sidama reside in modern-day Sidami Gopa. Before Sidami Gopa was forcefully incorporated into Ethiopia, their society was very unique but at the same time shared many traits with its neighbors when it came to governing, fighting, and religion and tradition. Like Oromia at the time, Sidami Gopa was more of a federation of different clans, each having their own king, known as a Mote, united with a common culture, language, and history. Some historians suggest that the only time Sidama clans ever united under one Mote was during their fight to keep their nation independent under Mote Balicha Warawo in the 1890s. The role of a Mote was to become a political decision maker for his clan, as women are not allowed to become Motes themselves. For one to even become a Mote, they must be elected from their clan's council of elders, so it is not solely hereditary. Another way men can play a political role in their community, no matter the scale, is by being initiated to elderhood, more specifically Chimesa. This kind of elderhood is different than just being a senior citizen, which is known as Gercho in Sidama. Chimeya, which is plural for Chimesa, are responsible for serving their society by counseling elders and enforcing the Sera, which is just an oral constitution, through various types of songos, which is a council of Chimeya, which come to a consensus to solve disputes between individuals and even clans depending on the type of songo they are involved in. To become a Chimesa, one has to go through rite of passage in the Sidama community. The Lua system, a variation of the Gutta system that any man can partake in, that teaches them to become a leader of the future, Barchima, which is circumcision, and obtaining Anga, essentially a philosophy or a code that makes you an ethical leader. A major downside to many political systems in the Sidama society at the time was the exclusion of women. Women still had their own systems and rituals to participate in during this time, but it was not as impactful as the Songos or the Mochicha. Just like many nations today, Sidama Gopa also had its own military, which was led by either the Secretary of Defense, known as the Gadana, or the Mote. This role would never be left to an elder, which is a common error believed by many. The actual soldiers came from the Lua system. The Lua system plays an instrumental role in the Sidama military as it trains men who are being fully initiated in the system and the art of war. For 5 months before they're fully initiated in their own grade for the rest of their lives, more or less depending on the clan, they are sent away from their families to camps to live among their peers. At these camps, they get military training by learning war songs, military strategies and tactics, and taking parts in raids and mock battles. After initiation, a Lua grade will pick a leader that will represent their generation that will be named Gadana, not to be confused with Gadana, the war secretary. Under the Gadana is the Jalawa, the Gadana's deputy, who is second in command and in charge of the Muricha, the military division leaders. An intricate military system like this constantly protected Sidama Gopa in constant skirmishes with surrounding nations over land. The last major system I'll be covering that governed everyday life in pre-conquered Sidama Gopa is the Woma system. This system is led by a Woma, a cultural and religious leader. Each clan has its own Woma, and how they are elected to the position varies from clan to clan. Some clans make the Woma a hereditary position, while other clans elect a Chimesa to the position. No matter the clan, their role in society is essentially the same. They oversee cultural and religious practices. This role would be too much of a burden on one person, so each Woma has a Womu Songo, a council of Chimeya that counsels them. This system had a much greater role in Sidama Gopa before the Sidama mass converted to Protestantism. Before the Christian God, they believed in one almighty creator called Kaalika, also known as Magano, who used to live among men until they either kept bickering him or they committed sin. Because of this, Kaalika departed from them and went into the heavens. However, he is still involved in the lives of the Sidama. It is believed by many that the idea of one God was instilled into the Sidama and the greater Cushitic people by contact with the ancient Egyptians in the 14th century BC, which I can neither confirm nor deny. The Sidama, however, also believed in spirits and honored their ancestors through sacrifices known as kakalo, not as a form of worship, but so these ancestors can act as a mediator between them and Kaalika. Even though many of these beliefs aren't practiced by the mainstream anymore, they still live on through tradition. Wait for part 2.